first of all, watching that makes my stomach just nauseous. Those aren't high school kids that are learning, thinking, trying, not that I would even at that level either in public schools. Those were little kids. Welcome back to another episode of Making the Leap. We're glad to have you with us. And I'm already sitting here thinking ahead to the next month, 2 months, 3 months. I feel like we're halfway through January and
Busy.
my head's in August and what's upcoming.
Yeah, 2025 is going to be an interesting year.
It is.
Lots of change, no shortage of news.
No.
Every now and again, we actually like to stop and check the headlines, kind of reset the table a little bit. Coming up, I will say next week, an important one. If you're a regular listener or either you're part of a Christian school, maybe an administrator, maybe a teacher, maybe thinking about it. I always like this. We've done it now twice.
This is our second year. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sadie Elliott directs all of our trainings here at the Herzog Foundation. And next week, we're going to spend some time with her. So next week's episode very specifically is going to be for anyone who I think is in the realm of Christian education right now.
Right. And wants to know what is Herzog about? What can it do for me? How, what can I get from it? And I think that would be a great thing.
People ask us often, like, what do you guys do at the foundation? What's it about? I don't really understand.
Mm-hmm.
I think next week's episode, if you missed it last year for some reason, next week is one you won't want to miss because it explains in full detail really what this place is all about.
Well, and what a neat piece too to have Sadie come on with us, because you and I had the opportunity to talk with her, or not talk with her, but listen to her give kind of the main speech at a fundraising event that we were at back in November, talking about kind of her growth in Christian education and what it meant to her and why it's so essential. And you can see in her dedication to what she's doing here at the foundation how she's just living that out. So I think that's phenomenal.
That's right. So we'll bring that to you next week, and you won't want to miss it. But this week we wanted to talk about some headlines that caught our attention. And
as we kick off 2025 with just, I want to say same old, but it's not. It feels like it's coming fast and furious and a little bit more intense.
I think
not
it's the
abating.
last gasps. I'm being optimistic here. Maybe
Okay.
I'm being optimistic. I think this is the last gasps of a desperate, radical movement that has tried to hijack the culture, and I think the culture is moving center right.
Okay.
If that's what you want to call it, moving away from this. And I think the last vestiges of this lunatic stuff are flailing and kicking as they're being dragged out the door. And I say that largely because of the election.
Yes. And when you say center right, I don't even think it has to be so intense. I think it's people hopping off a fence and just kind of being like, I'm going to plant myself here rather than over there.
It's the culture. Mm-hmm. Where is the culture? Is the culture in this country, and let's just start with one of the stories and dive right into it. Is the culture in this country embracing the notion that biological males can become women? Can our young children change their gender? Not even people 18 and up, but can minor children change their gender? If you even believe that one can change their gender, do you do it from minors, school children?
Yes, and I'm glad that you brought that up right from the beginning, because I think there is a split, even in the people that think no for minor children. They do think yes for an adult. And you and I have talked about adults can do what they please.
Sure.
Adults can go do whatever they want. And while I have often referenced our kids who are, almost 20, almost 19, our two oldest, that they're baby adults. Then I don't think, do they really have them? Like, they're trying to budget for paying rent and food and things. Do they have that capacity yet to be making those decisions? I think that's another argument. But yet we talk about children, 8-year-old, 7-year-old, 6-year-old being fed this information. And that is a whole nother level of, like you said, just, I call it evil, but it's a whole nother level of thought.
No, it's evil. I agree with you. And this is where I think it's aggressive and last gasps. And we shift to a story. I saw this first on Libs of TikTok. This person has made the news by virtue of the radio show that I do in the Philadelphia area, neighboring Delaware. Delaware's just obviously outside of Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. So Delaware's first district at-large representative in the House of Representatives is someone called,
I'm glad. No, it's someone. Say someone.
This
That's
person
correct.
calls themselves Sarah McBride.
Mm-hmm.
Sarah McBride was born a biological male named Tim.
Right.
And at some point, Tim decided to call himself Sarah. Fine, whatever.
Right.
Tim's an adult male who now wants to call himself a woman. And Tim used to work for something called the Human Rights Campaign, or Sarah. Now, I'll get more into what the Human Rights Campaign is in a minute. And the reason they're important is now, I'll just say Congressperson McBride won an election and is now the first transgender member of Congress. And this person made all the news late last year when this person was told by Republicans, led by Speaker Mike Johnson, you're not allowed to use the women's restroom. And you might remember congresspeople like Nancy Mace of South Carolina. Said, I was a victim of sexual assault. I don't want a biological man using our restroom.
And she was on board with Mike Johnson 100% saying, yes, thank you.
And Mike Johnson ultimately made the rule and said, no, you've got to use the restroom you were biologically born to. And so Sarah McBride acquiesced, the congressperson, and said, okay, I'll use the men's restroom, even though I go as a woman now. Fine. All right. So we moved on. We thought.
Right.
But no.
But no, it wasn't enough to just take the halls of our government.
And interestingly, this person repeatedly said, I wish we could get on about the business of the people, and I didn't
Why are
come
we
here
making
to
this
fight
a big
about
deal?
restrooms, and I'm just a person like the rest of you.
Let's not make this a thing.
That's not true. I find that the lion's share of folks like these have an agenda, an aggressive agenda, and of course, Congressperson McBride wasn't intent to leave well enough alone. First item up for bids as the newly sworn-in Congressperson of Delaware goes to read to the public school children of Delaware. And we found this video on TikTok, Libs of TikTok, I should say, and we'll play it for you. A little hard to hear, but this is, 30-second clip or something of Congressperson McBride, formerly Tim, now Sarah, reading to the little school children in public school. Take a listen. Take a watch.
She went with her family to the doctor, and the doctor said that she's a girl and everyone should see her and treat her like a girl, right? Which is to say that they should call her Jazz, and they should treat her with respect and be nice to her. But can I ask you one more question? So that journey that she had from people thinking she was a boy and the fact that Jazz knew she was a girl, to her parents and her friends accepting her as the girl that she is, that journey is called being transgender. And like Jazz said, that makes her a little different from some of the other kids. And Jazz at the end talks about how being different is good.
Okay, so...
okay, well, I'm going to, right there, first of all, watching that makes my stomach just nauseous. Those aren't high school kids that are learning, thinking, trying, not that I would even at that level either in public schools. Those were little kids sitting on a carpet in front of the congressperson, sitting there as he was going through and giving this whole process for what this was about.
I'll say, I will give this a caveat. I can't prove that these were public school kids in a public school classroom. We don't know the context of this video.
Fair.
And what we do know about a lot of left-wing wacko people is they will take their children and make them props to make it look like something. So it is highly possible that a bunch of lunatics that are part of this thing called the Human Rights Campaign took their innocent little children and set them in a scene that looks like a classroom for Congressperson McBride to come read to them about transgender. And I highly suspect this was designed to do exactly that by these left-wing wackos, to make it look like and get everybody talking about this biological male reading to small school children. That's what it's made to look like. I would bet you it actually didn't happen in a public school, but rather designed to make it look that way.
But that's just as gross, because those are families, people with this human rights campaign that feel it is 100% fine to take their kids, put them in, and then where do those little kids go? They go to the parks. They go to school, if that wasn't a real school setting. They go into their clubs, their activities, their sports. And what'd you do today? Oh, I listened to the congressperson from Delaware talk to me about Jazz and Jazz's journey, for lack of a better word, through this transgender issue. Those are still young kids.
Now, this is also an important component of this story to know that Congressperson McBride, before they became a member of Congress, do you know where they came from?
I don't.
You know what their job was? Communications director for, want to guess? The Human Rights Campaign. Yeah. Shocker. So now this person who's an elected member of Congress is doing the bidding of this organization that she used to represent in terms of their communication strategy. And so does it come in any surprise that this is now a prop? This person is now a prop using the imprimatur of a seat in Congress to promote the Human Rights Campaign. And just in case you don't know what the Human Rights Campaign is, I went to hrc.org, and here's exactly what it says, webpage front and center. First thing you read, the Human Rights Campaign envisions a world where every member of the LGBTQ plus family has the freedom to live their truth without fear and with equality under the law. That's the very first thing it says. This whole thing, this Human Rights Campaign, is about this issue. And so Congressperson McBride, as the former communications director, now a congressperson and reading to the little children.
And now has the skill set to go in and ask the very leading questions to those kids. Don't you think that? And those kids were, yes, nod, raise hands, yes. Don't you think that?
Yes.
And we're getting to that word again, that truth, their truth, rather than what we know to be true, which is then distorted and taken by those kids out into wherever they happen to go, park, school, whatever they're doing. Such that part is evil, but it's planned, right? But yes. I do hope what you're saying is true, that this is the last ditch effort to try to push something like this, to get people talking and get people fired up. I hope, I think they need to be continually called out, right? But I don't know. I think to keep going and keep pushing these stories and keep encouraging these kinds of situations. Libraries were having the same problem, having people show up, people showing up that were, let's go ahead and indoctrinate all these little kids with my one way of thinking. Let's ask the leading questions. That's the problem that we have across the board.
Also, did you notice behind Congressperson McBride on the stand-up poster there was the Jazz and Friends and all the stuff about all the, propaganda from the Human Rights Campaign, and one of the premier sponsors on it, the NEA. Did you see that?
I didn't.
Yeah, the logo NEA.
I was focused on jazz.
Right there on it.
Story.
So there they are, thick as thieves, the Human Rights Campaign and the National Education Association. That is a teachers' union. Hand in glove, right there.
Super glad I had some money sent to them back in the day. That's awesome.
And just in case you're curious, here was the book that Congressperson McBride was reading to the kids. Then one amazing day, everything changed. Mom and Dad took me to meet a new doctor who asked me lots and lots of questions. Afterward, the doctor spoke to my parents, and I heard the word transgender for the very first time. That night at bedtime, my parents both hugged me and said, "We understand now. Be who you are. We love you no matter what." That made me smile and smile. At the beginning of the year, they wanted me to use the boys' bathroom and play in the boys' team and gym. But that didn't feel normal to me at all. I was so happy when the teachers changed their mind.
So the teachers and the doctors were busy educating the parents on everything that was wrong with their kid.
Poor kid and their stupid parents. And the smart doctor and the smart teacher told stupid mom and dad what was wrong with me.
Boy, aren't we lucky.
Happy 2025.
Well, make America healthy again, right? I mean, that's where I think some of this
is why. This crap is why the election, folks.
Right.
If anybody doubts it, and I don't care what your politics are, this is why the election last fall.
Because it's so far the other direction.
Absurd.
It's ridiculous.
It's disgusting. Anyway, what else do you have?
Well, I came across an article that was written, it was from Carrie Ingraham, who we had on with us back in January of last year. We had her on with us talking about, at the time we were talking about CSL model, which was a college simulated learning model, hybrid home for high schools, kind of modeling after university models, and how schools are using their spaces, I would say creatively, to go ahead and accommodate learning styles, learning information, different, shorter staff amounts, things like that. So we had her on talking with us. So you can check that out if you want to go back and listen. That was really, really interesting, actually, and we learned a lot that day with her. But she puts out something called Two Truths and a Lie. It comes out on the Independent Women's Forum, I believe. And she'll kind of address different topics and talk about different things. And this one caught my eye because it was school choice. So it was Two Truths and a Lie, school choice in the states. She made 3 statements, pretty basic statements. Public education is failing the vast majority of students. Education freedom is spreading across the country, and teachers' unions support school choice. And then you went through and which one's true or which one's false. And so just there were some statistics that I think are always good to keep in our heads as we're talking to parents who are still kind of like, I don't know, I'm not sure if this is the right place, right thing, what's happening in public schools, that while on average across the country, the amount being spent on students is about $19,000 a year from the school districts, right, across the state. But 77% of those students that are graduating are not proficient in the main subject areas.
Amazing.
77%.
For $19,000 a year.
For $19,000 a year. And so I think that's important based on some of our conversations that we have regarding tuition, regarding tax money, regarding the money that we have, how it can follow us, what we spend.
Yeah, so when people
education.
say it's too expensive to send my child to a private institution, a Christian school, too expensive. We spend on average, to your point, $19,000 a year on students. Most of them come out not proficient.
Which that should feel too expensive. That should be the conversation that people are having. So that was her first statement. So obviously, that one was true that public education is failing the majority of the students. Now, there's always somebody who wants to say, my school is fine. Yes, the majority, and that's why it's called an average. The second statement I thought was an interesting one. Education, and we've talked about this, education freedom is spreading across the country. We know that to be true. There are 12 states now that have put in universal or near universal school choice throughout their states. And 74% of Democrats and 73% of Republicans supported those measures in overall. I thought that was interesting. I feel like it should be a little higher on the Republican end when you're talking about autonomy and independence, things like that. But
again, it's that rural thing.
Right. But I know. But it was still an interesting, pretty evenly, that Democrats and Republicans are both kind of even in that. And yet we're moving through 12 out of 50 that have that in place. So
yeah, it's a winning political issue, but back to that stamped logo on the propaganda that we just talked about, the NEA. The power of these unions, the people want it. The politicians are still lukewarm to it because of the sheer power of teachers' unions and school district politics has got such a death grip on so many political leaders in our state capitals. It's stunning.
That came right to the third point, which was the lie, right? Teachers' unions support school choice. Well, of course, we know that's not true.
Yeah, no.
But put in, again, another statistic, I thought this statement was important. The teacher unions use a large portion of teachers' money collected from dues to influence politics by allocating money to political campaigns, which are almost exclusively to a single political party, the Democratic Party. We know that to be true, but I think that is a statement that people need to keep in mind, that when these unions are sending out their money, they are not, while we have Democrats and Republicans maybe evenly supporting school choice, the money is fully going to one party and not the other. And that you're really, again, doing a disservice to your school, to your constituents, to the people in your district. The second largest teachers union, the American Federation of Teachers, allocated 99.99% of campaign contributions in the 2022 cycle, and 99% again in the 2024 cycle to Democrats.
Yeah.
So I thought those are just things I think that are facts and statistics, information to just keep top of mind when you're like, I think my school's okay. I think my district's okay. Well, okay, who are your teachers affiliated with? Are they affiliated with these unions? Most likely a lot of them are. Not all. I mean, I was one that was on my way out of being done with a union. I had friends around me, a few, who quietly were like, you don't have to do that anymore. We talk with Jenny Gentles, who talks about options that educators have to not be a part of these unions and still have protections and things kind of set up around them. But I just thought the Two Truths and a Lie is just something interesting. And because we had such a great conversation with Carrie, I wanted to kind of bring that in.
Where can people find that?
That is at the Independent Women's Forum.
Okay.
And so if you just type that in, easy to pull up. She's one of their, I think, more prolific authors. I think she writes a lot there, but the Two Truths and a Lie, she's got them on a lot of different topics. And they're just really great blurbs just to kind of pull up and think about and backed up, which I like.
Another story this week that popped up, also courtesy of the good people at Libs of TikTok. They do great work. I have to say that's where I see a lot of these things. It's not exclusively school issues that they cover, but often it is.
Right.
And yet another, this is in conjunction with a group called Accuracy in Media. So this footage that we're about to air or show you that you're listening to or watching, if you watch us on YouTube, and I would commend it to you if you can watch it. The Accuracy in Media folks went undercover into Dallas, Texas school district.
Dallas-Fort Worth.
Dallas-Fort Worth. And they did this because Texas has recently passed a law that says you got to play the sports of your assigned gender. So if I've got a son who now wants to call himself a girl, my son who now wants to call himself a girl in Texas cannot play with the girls.
Correct.
That's not going to work in Texas. That's the law. However, it won't come as a surprise to you that there are a good number of people inside the public school system, including Dallas-Fort Worth, one of its largest. And the person on this particular video is someone called Mahogany Gaston, who is the youth program coordinator. Listen to this title, the Dallas ISD.
That's the Independent School District, so the Dallas Independent School District.
LGBTQ Youth Program Coordinator. If that fits on a business card, I'd be impressed.
That's a big fat placard right there.
So this journalist goes undercover to talk with Mahogany Gaston, pretending that she is a parent of a biological male, now pretending to be a female, and wants to let the girl play on the girls' sports team. How are we going to get that done is basically the undercover conversation. And it's eye-opening. Take a watch. We'll discuss on the other side.
So the reason why I was told to come to you is because I'm looking to potentially move to Texas, potentially in this area. And my daughter is transgender, and I heard that you'd be able to help with that, kind of help with getting me a feel for the community.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as you know, well, one, you're very brave.
Oh, thank you. One big concern that we have is that my daughter's an athlete and she played soccer, and she's very into, she obviously wants to play on the girls' team, and there was some bigotry against her where we're from in the Arlington area, and then also in New Jersey where their family is. And do you think these people would be kind of more progressive, but they ended up not being as such? But I mean, would there be a way for her to play?
So, unfortunately, if it's like UIL sports, university, I don't know if they had it in all states. It's like University Intergalactic League. So if they're under the UIL, Texas passed a law that students can only participate in the sport that's listed on the birth certificate. Okay. Unless you have an updated birth certificate.
So if we had an updated birth certificate, and because we're able to do that in New Jersey, and I think also in Virginia, I believe you can put even X on the birth certificate. Would that be fine?
They said birth certificate. They didn't say original or updated. I mean, always finding. They find the loopholes and everything.
So there you have it. The way around this, very, very sneaky, very clever. There's nothing in the law that says if you come from another state where they let you amend your birth certificate, we'll just go off of that one.
We can always find a loophole. I think that was a key statement. We can always find a loophole.
Yeah.
Like, we are always going to be up against that, because there are going to be the Mahoganies of the world who pal around, yep, you got it. Well, there's no rule. Who says it has to be the original birth certificate? It can be an altered birth certificate. And so that's also, I mean, when you think she's probably not the only one looking for ways to subvert and change and find a way to get her agenda put into place at the expense of the safety of others. Yeah. I mean, that undercover journalist was flat out saying, well, sometimes people are going to get hurt, girls are going to get hurt. Will you protect us? Yes. Yeah,
and furthermore, the journalist, when posing as the parent, set it up and told this, whoever she is, youth program coordinator, this is what I want to try to do. Her first words to this journalist posing as a parent was, "You're very brave." You're very brave. What's brave about someone taking their biological male and putting them into female sports and then probably hurting the girls at some point.
Right, that's what I mean. With the knowledge, like, again, it's a made up story, but with that premise that we know something's probably going to happen and we want to now be protected. We're not worried about protecting the people we're going to be on the field with, those girls on the field, or, their injuries or anything like that. We want to be protected for our one, and how can we go ahead and twist this up? That's gross.
Yep.
It's, again, I feel like sometimes we overuse the word, or I overuse the word evil, but that is a lot working at play in a lot of different arenas. And I think while it is a journalist with that story, if Mahogany was willing to do that for her, she's willing to do or has done other things to kind of twist around and get around rules that are in place.
Yeah, this is the antagonism, that I say, the last gasps of desperate people who were like, well, we'll just skirt around the law, or hey, let's read to the little kids. It's antagonism. And that's fine. What we know now is where the American public is. Right. The last election tells us where the American public is. So we no longer need to live in a state of reservation or nervousness, or we don't want to hurt feelings or be impolite. No, when you see this stuff, you have to stomp it like a bug. And more importantly, more specifically, you have to rescue your children from this, because there are these subversive creatures lurking in the shadows of, I would submit to you, probably every, at least major school district in the country. The Mahoganies of the world are everywhere.
And that's not right. That's not to say every adult in all those districts, but 100%. You've got one in one position, one or two in a couple of positions, and sometimes that's all it takes.
They want at our kids. This is not, and have you noticed that this is not an adult issue? This actually, none of these things ever have anything to do with adults. Right. It's always about our children. They always want at our children. Because they don't want this to be something adults sort out and then become comfortable in their own skin and lead their lives as a different gender. They want to get the kids at a very, very early age grooming their parents, that their parents are wrong for insisting they're the biological sex they're born.
Well, and imagine, I know you said we aren't sure if that first video that we showed was a real setup or not in a school, but let's assume it was. Let's assume that was a real school sitting there. Well, now we've got a real school sitting there with a congressperson in place who's actively supporting and promoting transgenderism. Then you come to the next place where you have a director, you have a person sitting there saying, well, we're starting at this age, this first grade, second grade, we're going to carry it on all the way through. So now we've got it up at our high school level. It is across the board. It is not limited to one demographic area. We have Texas and we have Delaware. It's not delegated to one age level. It's across the board. It's everywhere.
So keep a sharp eye. Another just kind of update, really. It's not necessarily about school choice or Christian education, but it is something that we're watching as the country this week and last week has been watching the awful fires. Fire has just swallowed Southern California. And not terribly long ago, back on episode 121, we talked to the Bennetts, Julie and Chris Bennett. And they had an amazing story anyway about their trek across the country.
Right. Moving from Oklahoma out to California. We were joking with them when we had them here, like, we're going to find our way out to you. This is amazing, because their story encompassed so many different avenues. We did talk about education in school, although we really were there to talk with them about their journey in their book called Fighting for Family, is what the name of their book was. And you can find that anywhere books are sold. We talked a little bit about what their organization, or what they are about, what they do. But it kind of dove into, basically God's provision in all, like in everything. And they seem to kind of get somewhere and hit a roadblock. Moved from Oklahoma to California and got cancer. Right. Driving their kids literally hours for schools, figuring out where they wanted to go, had their kids in different places, trying to meet all the needs, finding a church, being homeless, basically. They were, I don't know if you remember that part, talking about how they would live in a certain place and they'd have to go. They didn't have a place where they could be permanently. So it was a lot.
Chris is a pastor, and he was pastoring a church, I believe, in the area that's burning right now.
Yes, I believe so. And they're living in the area. And so I actually happened to come across on Instagram. I found his wife, Julie, who we had a great, part of that great conversation. And she was just really sharing from her heart. It really just struck me, just sharing from her heart about what this is, where we see these horrible, horrible things happening, such as these fires, or even the hurricanes that were, that happened last year, that God is working through the humanity of people in all these tragedies. And it was just a very heartfelt thing. And it really just struck me because I thought we just talked to her and they had
what a life.
So much, right?
I mean, so much trauma.
And
so
granted, their house was fine. She said our house is fine. Gas line was cut, that kind of thing. But you could tell.
Well,
it's another weighty.
This affected a lot of their parishioners in their church and
friends,
so,
family.
Yeah. Listen to her testimony. It's really, I mean, in spite of what she's going through, and all of them are going through in Southern California, this is the kind of hope she has. Take a listen.
I am humbled and grateful to still have my home. But in our church community, there are families and individuals who have lost everything. Our community, beyond our church community, we love you and we are with you. And sitting with you in grief, and it's just overwhelming. And when the cameras stop and the news stops reporting and people move on with their lives, that's when the real work begins of rebuilding. And there's something incredible about humanity, no matter what your political views are or your faith beliefs. I see the design of God in humanity in a way that's really incredible. All that stuff goes out the window, and you just meet the needs of others, and you don't think about yourself, and it's beautiful, and it's how we were intended to live every day of our lives. But I tell you what, God doesn't waste anything, and he is present in suffering. He has been from the beginning of time. There's been many wars and devastation and travesty in ways that are hard to comprehend and are otherworldly, but God is present, and I see him hovering.
So there you have it. I mean, just
that kind of hope, I think that's what it's about, right? That is the hope that we want. That's why we've talked about what we talk about. We want our kids to find that. They're going to find hopeful people all around, but we specifically look to the Bible for our hope, and I think that is something that people can take something from.
They have seen more than their fair share of tragedy and difficulty, and they can maintain that spirit. It's a reminder that I think hopefully all of us can as Christians. We should.
So we're just continuing to pray for them, praying for the other people, so many people that are affected, but trying to see where God is in that and continue to share that out.
Yeah. Any other news stories before we close today?
No. I think that's plenty.
Yeah, that's more than enough.
Right.
We could do it all day, but for now, we'll leave it at that. We do hope, speaking of news, if you want the very, very best news on stories like these and so much more, would you go to readlion.com because our colleagues and friends just down the hall from us where we do this show, they're constantly at work at readlion.com. Writing stories like these, covering stories that just frankly don't get the attention they deserve.
And not just on education, right? Because they're covering culture, they're covering topical news, covering education, parenting, everywhere. Yep. So I think that's important.
So that's at readlion.com. Of course, I'm anchor now of a show called The Lion Week in Review, which is growing by leaps and bounds. We're doing a radio show with that now, which is cool. Watch for that and other offerings at herzogfoundation.com, other great podcasts and shows. And of course, always next week when we're going to talk about this training, if you're a teacher at a Christian school, again, tune in next week. You're going to have a fascinating walk through what it is we actually do here for Christian educators, for administrators, for board
right outside
folks.
of the media end of thing, what is happening.
Yeah. So that's all at herzogfoundation.com. Until next week, thanks a lot for downloading the show. Hope you'll give it a comment or two, maybe a 5-star review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And we'll see you next week right here.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. We'd love your feedback by rating us and commenting on the show.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Making the Leap.